So, this video is in response to Feli's video, how you very basically gave the idea of what whether the U.S. is a democracy or a republic or such, and the federal republic side of things. Now, I'll try to make this under 10 minutes, but I'll try to strengthen your hand, but then simultaneously at the same time weaken your hand. So I'm not attacking how you explained it, but I'll give you an idea of how Americans look at it and then how they look at the European version. Now, to understand the synopsis, this is an American synopsis. The idea of America, in that usually if you go back far enough, which you have to go back to European Enlightenment time, the idea of America is the idea that comes from European Enlightenment in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. That's the time period. So let's say about 90 years before the Revolutionary War, so that would be like 1680, 1670. What happens is what people misunderstand and what they don't really explain is what you said, which is the direct democracy or pure democracy where everyone votes on everything. You are correct in that. Where the difference lies, or at least theoretically within American mindsets, is that the Constitution, which unlike, say, the Polish Constitution, which the U.S. Constitution is modeled after a little bit, the U.S. Constitution was meant to restrict the U.S. government. It was meant to rein in, and it was a set of rules of what you cannot do as the national branch of government. Now, to understand, the Constitution was ratified in 1789 or 1793. Before this, there was the Articles of Confederation. Now, even though the Articles of Confederation is not law now, it still has some bearing and effect, because in the Articles of Confederation, there was a weak central government. And in the U.S. Constitution, you have a little bit of a stronger central government, but it's a give and have not give between states cannot coin money. Under Articles of Confederation, they could coin money. Under the U.S. Constitution, coining money is addressed to the government or the Congress or the U.S. Treasury. Now, the idea of what people argue about in democracy and republic is what you say with the pure democracy. However, over the past 100, 200 years, they changed the original meaning. So it used to be that the states would elect U.S. senators. Nowadays, everyone votes every 2 to 4 to 6 years, and every 6 years a U.S. senator is up. And what happens is when the U.S. senator is up for re-election, it goes towards the popular vote or people's vote for that. But for, about 150 or so years, this was decided by the state legislature of every state. It was not a regular person's vote. Now, also, in the early U.S., up until Richard Nixon and some other things, you could only vote after the age of 21 before Richard Nixon. And also in the early USA, you could only vote if you had property. So the idea is that you had to have skin in the game. You had to have something at risk for things to matter when you are voting. So if you vote, you know that it can affect your property. It can affect what you own. It can affect this. Now those things have been done away with because you only have to be 18 years old. So the bar has been lowered and not raised. So this is where all of the confusion lies in. On top of it, in the US, it's not only that it's a parliamentarian system, there's 3 branches of government, which I'm sure you know, and each of them are separated and use a check on the other. This is why the Congress can run an impeachment against the president, and then why the judicial branch or Supreme Court or one type of court can say, well, the Congress is wrong, or the executive is wrong, or the legislative is wrong, and the executive branch is wrong. It all comes down to legal speak of interpretation and how you interpret the law, and then how everything will go about with everything that it's doing. But at the same time, they really misuse the vocabulary. But this is, of course, politicians speak of what you expect to be one thing, and then it's really another thing. And it's actually, kind of like a bad salesman's job in that when someone's trying to oversell you something that's not really valued so high. And that's where the problem lies in. So the U.S. is unique in the sense that the Constitution limits the national or state authority over the individual. That's the unique part. In Europe, the law, I think, is made more towards what they call a positivism, which means that the government grants you certain rights. As to where in the U.S., the view is that the government cannot remove or take away certain rights without going through a process. I know this goes through a deeper philosophical point, but it's a point of natural law, a law from nature. So what happens in nature is normal in like an act of God. Or it's the look of how the government will grant you rights and then they can take those rights away. That is the way that I understand everything within, say, whether it's constitutional or whether it's this or whether it's that and that. So that's the starting point. Now, is there a different philosophy, think, between how laws should be read or should be interpreted from the European Union to the USA? Yeah, and this is what makes Europe, Europe, and this is what makes the USA, the USA. And this is where you get a difference in culture from British monarchy to American rugged independence, so to speak. But that is my perspective view.